Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show.
Truth be told, Sai had never thought of having a relationship with anyone since her body constitution was a bit special. Her grandpa had gone to great lengths to keep her secret safe from those who might take advantage of her. The legacy of the Celestial Maiden. That was a blessing but also a curse that was bestowed upon Sai the moment she was born. She was blessed with a body that would allow her to raise her rank smoothly, and yet, if anyone were to take her chastity and mark them as their own, they would gain this ability as well. Not only that, but they could also absorb Kay's strength, until her rank regressed to that of a beginner. Although she could regain this rank in a short period of time, because of her body constitution, she could still lose it in a matter of minutes, the moment someone had their way with her body, without regard for her well-being. Because of this, Sai wore a mask that was the body of a boar, which she transformed into, whenever she traveled outside of the safety of her tribe. And now, she would surrender her fate to the red-headed teenager, who was now looking at her, with love and lust, which made her heart beat wildly inside her chest. "Are you really sure?" Lux asked. "I may not be able to stop myself any longer." The tip of Lux's swollen member was now at the entrance of her nether lips, that were parted and slick with desire, waiting for that moment when the two of them would become one. Both knew that the moment they took that final step, their relationship would never be the same again. Right now, they could still stop and return to their usual skinship without breaking the final barrier that protected the High Priestess' chastity, as well as identity. "Yes," Sai replied as she wrapped her legs around Lux's waist, pulling him close to her. "I'm sure of it." Seeing the determination in her gaze, Lux knew that there was no longer any need to ask any more questions. As if to assure her that he would take full responsibility, he once again kissed her lips. This time, it was a gentle yet passionate kiss, making Sai feel loved. When the kiss ended, Lux moved his hips, making one powerful thrust. Sai tightly clenched the bed sheets as she endured the pain of her deflowering. Tears formed at the corner of her eye, and yet, they didn't fall, for she held them back. Lux, who had taken Kay's chastity, didn't move and waited for a little while until Kay's pain subsided. His fingers wiped the tears that were threatening to fall from Kay's eyes. Only after a minute did Lux start to move his hips. He did it as gently as possible, slowly loosening her tight cave and helping her adapt to his shape and size. Sai, who was in pain earlier, also noticed that a tingling sensation was starting to spread from her lower abdomen, where she and Lux were joined. Lux could feel this as well, as a power that he never felt before started to wash over his body. This sensation felt warm and intimate, and he couldn't help but groan due to how good it felt. The High Priestess of the Rowan tribe was feeling the same thing as the red-headed teenager, whose throbbing manhood was going deeper inside of her with each thrust. Her fears of being used as a tool to advance the ranks of others shattered like a crystal vase. Right now, she was feeling one with the half-elf, who had promised to take responsibility for her. She knew that Lux would keep his word, and with this belief, she no longer resisted the strange and intimate sensation that she was feeling for the first time in her life. "I think you should take a look at." As Lux and Sai were both intoxicated with the feeling of pleasure, they noticed something at the same time. Their powers seemed to be mingling with each other in the place where they were joined. Simply put, it was a pleasure beyond words. They didn't know if this was a good or bad thing, but there was no way for them to stop. Lux's hips started to move a little faster, while Kay's sensuous moans started to grow louder. Unknown to both of them, the entrance of Kay's womb had fully opened, allowing the tip of Lux's member to reach the place where it had never gone before. At that moment, he felt as if his little brother had been electrocuted, making him release his essence directly into the place where babies were made. Lux's orgasm was so strong that he even felt pain as his seed spurted endlessly inside Kay's womb, milking him dry. A minute passed, but for Lux, that 1 minute felt like an eternity. Only when the last drop of his essence was released did the tingling sensation stop. Lux then felt his world spin around him, making him fall on top of the lady under him. Sai didn't feel burdened by Lux's weight. In fact, she even wrapped her arms around him, not letting him go. Since both of them were hugging each other, they didn't notice that a mark, similar to a tattoo, had appeared on Kay's lower abdomen. It looked like a heart with 6 wings spread wide on the sides, glowing faintly amidst the dimly lit room. As Lux's consciousness slowly faded, rows of text appeared inside his head. The half-elf no longer had the strength to read the words that appeared in front of him and welcomed the darkness that caught him firmly in its embrace. If only Lux took some time to see the information that was written on the notification, he would surely be surprised by what was written there. Congratulations! You now gain the power of the legacy of the Celestial Maiden. You have gained 10,000 bonus stat points that you can freely distribute. Strengthening your bonds with her will allow you to raise your rank by leaps and bounds. Just make sure not to overdo it, or you might harm her body instead. If you go past the safety quota each week, you will absorb the Celestial Maiden's rank, making it regress for every stat that you drain from her. Remember, do things in moderation, and the two of you will be able to complement each other. This would allow the two of you to mutually increase your strength and reach the pinnacle of the mortal ranks in a few years' time. When Lux opened his eyes, he found his head nestled between Kay's breasts. He was still half asleep, but the softness, similar to that of a marshmallow, felt so comfortable that he decided to remain in that position for a while. Due to his sensitivity, he could also feel someone hugging him from behind, pressing her body against his, sharing her warmth. As he listened to the gentle breathing of the two beautiful ladies by his side, the cogs of Lux's brain finally started to turn. The events that happened several hours ago washed over his mind like a flood. The half-elf could feel his cheeks burning in embarrassment, not because he was sandwiched between two peerless beauties, but due to the fact that he only managed to last one round with Sai. In short, he only did it once each with his two fiancées, and for someone who thought that he could handle both of them for 40 rounds, he fell short of his goal by leaps and bounds. After remembering his one-sided defeat against the High Priestess, Lux decided to be petty, and planted a kiss mark on Kay's cleavage, making the young lady's eyes flutter a bit. But due to how tired she was, her expression returned to normal, and she remained peacefully asleep without a care in the world. Lux knew that he was being petty, so he kissed the part that he lightly bit a while ago. Sai wasn't the one at fault. He was just caught off guard by her uncanny ability to milk him dry after doing it once. My weakness also came into play, Lux thought as his right hand caressed Kay's backside, feeling the smooth, plump buttocks that would make most young men howl like wolves. Perhaps due to Lux's gentle and sweet caress, Kay's eyelids fluttered open. She then lightly patted the half-elf's head, in a daze before guiding his lips towards her nipple, treating him like a baby who wanted to drink some milk. Lux was more than happy to accept Kay's invitation, and using his lips and tongue, he started to suckle and play with the pink tip that was starting to get hard. After making sure that the baby was obediently doing what he was supposed to do, Sai once again closed her eyes to sleep. For some reason, Lux also felt drowsy, and not long after, he once again fell asleep, still suckling the High Priestess' breast. 2 hours later, Lux suddenly woke up after he felt that his surroundings were shaking. The first thing he saw was his fiancée, Iris, who was looking down at him, with an amused expression on her face. The blue-haired beauty was on top of him, and it didn't take long for Lux to realize what was happening. "Good morning, Lux," Iris said as she moved her hips, giving Lux the strong temptation to grab the two beautiful breasts that were swaying menacingly in front of him. "Good morning, Iris," Lux replied as he placed his hands on her waist, supporting her body. "I never thought I'd wake up seeing you on top of me like this." Iris stopped moving her hips and lowered her head to kiss her fiancé. "Last night, I didn't get enough," Iris said softly. "I was hoping that we could do it one more time before breakfast." "We still have time," Lux replied. "Let's take things slowly." An hour later, Lux, Iris, and Sai bathed together in order to prepare for breakfast. The half-elf and the blue-haired beauty noticed that Sai was blooming like a beautiful flower, making them wonder if this was the side effect of her becoming Lux's woman. "What's wrong?" Sai asked with a smile. "Why are you two looking at me weirdly? Is there something wrong with my face?" "No," Lux replied. "Actually, you look more beautiful today than yesterday." "How can that be possible?" Sai lightly pulled the half-elf's ear, making Iris giggle. "But it's true, you know," Iris commented. "Although you look the same, your aura has changed a bit. It feels more mature." "Really?" "Yes." Although Sai doubted Lux's words, she didn't doubt Iris' comment. Not long after, all three of them got dressed. The two ladies then went into the next room, where Aiko and Fei Fei had slept for the night. To their surprise, the two baby slimes were no longer asleep and were simply making blast bombs as if it was a fun game to play. The corner of Iris and Kay's lips twitched as they looked at the pile of blast bombs that were on top of the bed. Both of them knew that if these blast bombs exploded, a good chunk of Iris' residence would be destroyed. "I think you should take a look at Val." "Why?" Aiko and Fei Fei noticed the two ladies and immediately jumped into their arms, completely ignoring the dangerous bombs that were still piled up on top of the bed. Naturally, Lux was the one to do the cleanup, encasing all the blast bombs inside a skeleton bomb, ready to use at a moment's notice. After his discussion with Garrett, he no longer thought that Aiko's and Glee's addiction to making bombs was a problem. In fact, He wanted them to make more bombs, so that when the divine army of light came knocking on their doors, he could give them an explosive welcome that they would never forget. When Lux, Iris, and Sai arrived at the dining table, Maximilian gave Lux a wink, which the latter returned with a wink of his own. He had noticed the changes in his granddaughter's temperament, and quickly figured out that she had taken that final step, which would bind her fate to the red-headed teenager, whose aura had changed as well. Whether Vera and Alexander also noticed that something was different with Sai, they didn't show it on their faces. They simply asked the teenagers to sit, so that they could have breakfast together. Halfway through their meal, Maximilian spoke up, telling Lux about the move that his Rowan tribe was planning to make. "I will send rankers to explore the Gate of the Apocalypse," Maximilian stated. "Since rankers are allowed to enter it, I'm guessing that it isn't something simple. Sai will be going there as well because she feels as if something inside is calling out to her. Don't worry, Hector and the rest of our elite warriors are going to accompany her to ensure her safety." Hector is Xander's father. If you forgot who Xander is, he was Kay's protector during the previous dungeon expeditions. Lux nodded his head in understanding before shifting his gaze to his stepfather, Alexander. "Barbados Academy will also be sending rankers," Alexander stated. "Alicia will be their leader in this expedition. Henrietta and her guild members will also be joining as well. I want them to gain as much experience as possible before breaking through and becoming rankers themselves." Henrietta was the guildmaster of Barbatos Academist Guild, Serenity. She was now a peak initiate, but her ranker trial had something to do with the Gate of the Apocalypse. Because of this, she still hadn't made her breakthrough, and was waiting for the domain of the Fallen to open in order to ascend to the next rank. "And Iris?" Lux asked as he held the hand of the blue-haired beauty beside him. Alexander paused for a bit before nodding his head. "She is going to go as well. I have kept her away from the sacred dungeon long enough. It is time for her to participate as well." Lux held Iris' hand a little more tightly, but he understood what his stepfather was trying to do. Neither of them wanted Iris to become a greenhouse flower, one that would easily wilt when taken out to the wild, unable to handle harsh environments. Although they were overprotective of her, they also understood that holding back her growth would be detrimental to her future, and would prevent her from reaching her full potential. "Don't worry, I'll be fine," Iris said with a smile. "I have gone to dangerous places before. Besides, I have my guardians to protect me. Also, Alicia and the other rankers of Barbatos Academy will be there." Lux nodded. "Don't worry, I know you'll be safe." "What about me?" Sai asked in a teasing tone. "Aren't you worried about my safety?" "Of course. I am worried about you as well," Lux replied before holding Kay's hand under the table. "Be safe for me, okay?" "Okay," Sai replied. This exchange made Maximilian chuckle, while Vera and Alexander simply smiled. If not for the reason that his guild headquarters was in danger of being discovered by the Divine Army of Light due to their location, Lux might have also accompanied his two fiancées. Even though he wasn't interested in exploring the Gate of the Apocalypse, he wouldn't mind tagging along to ensure their safety. "When will all of you leave for the domain of the Fallen?" Lux inquired. 2 days from now," Alicia replied. "Our preparations are almost finished. The rankers of the Rowan tribe and Barbados Academy will move as one to explore the Gate of the Apocalypse. I'm sure that the other factions are thinking of doing the same thing. After all, if we find valuable resources, we don't want to share them with others. Basically, it's on a first-come, first-served basis. The 6 kingdoms and our factions have already talked about this. No one will steal the other's resources, and we will all mind our own business." Maximilian smirked. "If they try anything funny, I'll make sure that they regret it when they return. After all, we will be monitoring the events that will happen through the artifacts that everyone will be carrying with them." The Saint of the Rowan tribe had also warned the 6 kingdoms, as well as the Zinner War Pact, that anyone who would target his tribe, as well as the members of Barbatos Academy, would receive his wrath. Knowing how hot-tempered and easily angered Maximilian was, the rulers of the 6 kingdoms warned their members to not antagonize their candidates inside the gates of the apocalypse. "Fight!" Eiko shouted as she looked at the white unicorn, Astra, whom she hadn't managed to defeat in the past. Right after breakfast, the baby slime went looking for her rival to demand a rematch. "Fight!" Eiko repeated as she glared at the unicorn, who was looking down at her, with an annoyed expression on his face. Astra simply snorted in response to Eiko's demands, but the baby slime continued to pester him to fight. "Fight!" Eiko shouted when Astra was eating. "Fight!" Eiko repeated when Astra was simply walking in the hallways. "Fight! Fight! Fight!" Everywhere Astra went, the baby slime would follow him, demanding a fight. However, no matter how Eiko insisted, Astra ignored her challenges, making the baby slime so angry that she started to throw blast bombs in the unicorn's direction. Iris' residence was protected by powerful barriers that only saints would be able to destroy. However, even though Aiko's blast bombs didn't damage the surroundings, the loud explosions made some of the students wonder if they were under attack. Astra simply teleported away each time Aiko attacked him. Unfortunately for the unicorn, he wasn't the only one with the ability to teleport. Soon, a battle of teleportation commenced with Aiko throwing blast bombs at the unicorn, who was teleporting everywhere within Iris' residence. "Are the two of you not going to stop them?" Sai asked Lux and Iris, who were calmly drinking some tea on the balcony. "Aiko won't rest until she gets her rematch," Lux replied after he finished drinking his tea. She had been striving to get stronger in order to win against Astra. "Even if I ask her to stop, I doubt she'll listen." Iris, on the other hand, smiled because she had an idea why Astra was avoiding the baby slime. After she became a ranker, Astra and her other guardians also became stronger. However, Aiko had also improved. Perhaps, the white unicorn knew that the current Aiko was someone he couldn't beat easily. Because of this, he was avoiding a fight with her so that she wouldn't be able to have the satisfaction of beating him. Currently, Iris' hands were tied. She loved Aiko and Astra, and she didn't want to pick sides. Because of this, she just waited until the baby slime managed to convince the white unicorn to fight her. Soon, the explosions became louder and more intense with each passing minute. Aiko had already summoned 5 clones and attacked Astra with growing intensity. The unicorn also summoned 5 clones in order to confuse the baby slime, but for some reason, Aiko was able to detect the real one, and she focused all of her attention on her target with a determined look on her face. This time, the students were really starting to panic because the explosions were truly hard to ignore at the moment. Even Alexander and Alicia, who were in the headmaster's office, knew that this couldn't go on. "I'll handle this," Alexander said before disappearing from where he sat. "I think you should take a look at." Alicia could only shake her head helplessly before walking out of the office. She wanted to know how the headmaster of Barbatos Academy was planning to deal with the baby slime, who would stop at nothing to have her revenge. "Fight!" Aiko and her clones shouted in unison as they all threw blast bombs in Astra's direction, making the white unicorn teleport once again. However, this time, he wasn't able to go anywhere because the space around him twisted, locking him in place. Aiko was also frozen in place, and the blast bombs she tossed fell harmlessly to the floor without exploding. "Stop making a ruckus inside the academy," Alexander said, making the baby slime and the white unicorn avert their gazes. Alexander sighed before tossing the two of them to the arena of the academy. He also understood that Aiko wouldn't stop with her terrorist antics until she got what she wanted, so he decided to just let the two of them fight and get it over with. The headmaster of Barbatos Academy placed a strong barrier in the arena, preventing the two from escaping. Deep inside, he was curious to know how strong the baby slime had become after accompanying the half-elf on his adventures in Elysium. Seeing that the only way out was to fight, Astra no longer hesitated and neighed angrily at the baby slime, who annoyed him. Aiko, on the other hand, had a fearless smile on her face as she prepared to fight her rival. The two stared at each other for half a minute before both of them disappeared from where they stood. When their figures appeared, they clashed at the center of the arena. A loud explosion took place, creating a dust of white smoke in the surroundings. However, within that white smoke, two figures were moving at high speeds, creating shockwaves each time they collided with each other. "Wow," Sai muttered as she looked at the battle between Aiko and Astra. "I didn't know that Aiko had become this strong." Lux, who was seated beside her, had his arms crossed over his chest with a proud smile on his face. "You ain't seen nothing yet," Lux stated. A strong gust of wind blew the dust cloud away, revealing the two combatants inside the arena. On one side, a flying white unicorn with lightning streaking from the tip of its horn appeared. On the other side, a young girl, with long blue hair and blue eyes, looked at her opponent with a devilish smile on her adorable face. A blue crown nestled on top of her head, and a pair of butterfly wings flat behind her back. Iris and Sai, who were seeing Aiko's fairy princess transformation for the first time, weren't able to resist being charmed by her cute appearance. Even Vera and Alicia, who had come to watch the battle, were surprised by Aiko's current form. Aiko spread her arms wide and countless blast bombs materialized around her, covering nearly half of the arena. "Boom boom Bakugan!" Aiko shouted, and the countless blast bombs flew toward Astra like a swarm of bees, eager to sting their prey whom their mistress wanted to defeat the most. The countless blast bombs flew towards Astra, but the unicorn simply snorted before teleporting away from his location. However, Aiko had already expected him to make the same move, so she scattered all the blast bombs across the arena and detonated them at the same time. This caused a chain reaction to take place, and soon, a series of explosions shook the entire arena. A thick dust cloud appeared in the surroundings, but Eiko knew that this kind of attack wouldn't be able to reach the unicorn, whom she treated as her rival. With a wave of her hand, the dust cloud disappeared. At the far end of the arena, Astra hovered in the air, with a dome of light protecting him. The unicorn then eyed the fairy princess with a serious expression, before flying high up in the air. It then raised its horn toward the sky, creating dark storm clouds above the arena. With a neigh filled with defiance, Astra summoned countless lightning bolts, which rained down upon Eiko. He intended to finish the battle as early as possible because his opponent made him feel that the longer the battle continued, the less chances he had of winning. However, just as the countless lightning bolts were about to hit their target, all of their trajectories changed, as if being attracted by something. At the center of the arena, a 5-meter-tall thunder slime absorbed the countless lightning bolts, resulting in its entire body glowing white. The corner of Astra's lips twitched after seeing the Argonaut-ranked world boss that appeared out of nowhere. He then neighed angrily at Eiko, which meant, "Girl, this is a one-on-one battle. Why are you summoning world bosses to our fight?" Eiko, who could understand almost all the languages of the beasts in the world, smiled fearlessly. "I don't fight one-on-one battles," Eiko replied with a smile. Lux, who was watching on the stands, nodded his head in satisfaction. "That's my girl," Lux said with a smug expression on his face. Clearly, he approved of Eiko's way of fighting, which resembled his own. Iris and Sai, who were seated beside him, didn't know whether they should laugh or cry at the way Eiko and Lux handled one-on-one battles. The thunder slime then growled in anger as if it didn't like Astra's treatment of its mistress. It then leapt into the air, turning into a blur, and charged at Astra with great speed. Just as the unicorn was about to use its teleportation again, the space in its surroundings seemed to distort, preventing the unicorn from breaking free from the space created by the Argonaut-ranked world boss Thunder Slime. Thunder Slimes not only specialized in attacking their opponents with lightning bolts, but they also had the ability to distort space, creating booming shock waves that was followed by roars of thunder. Astra was quick to react, once again summoning a barrier to protect himself. The moment the Thunder Slime smashed against Astra's barrier, a loud thunderous sound ensued, making the students of the academy cry out in shock and fear, due to how loud and scary the sound was. Astra might be strong, but his strength was only equivalent to that of an Argonaut-ranked alpha monster. If the unicorn were to be matched with one of Lux's summons, he would be equivalent to the half-elf's Nightgaunt, Shax. The barrier didn't break, but the unicorn was blown away, smashing into the corner of the arena, where a barrier was erected, preventing anyone from escaping the battlefield. The unicorn then crashed to the ground, making Iris clench her fist. At the end of the day, Astra was still her guardian beast. As a beast summoner, she had full faith in her friend and protector, who had accompanied her in many dangerous situations. "I think you should take a look at." As if sensing her gaze, Astra looked at the stands where Iris was seated. The unicorn then propped himself up from the ground and neighed loudly. "He is undoing his seal," Iris said with a serious expression on her face. "Astra is now going to fight for real." The Thunder Slime, who had no idea what Astra was doing, didn't give a hoot and once again charged at his opponent with the intention of beating the crap out of him. At that exact moment, a blinding light erupted from where Astra stood, making everyone briefly cover their eyes. A loud explosion followed as the Thunder Slime collided with the brilliant light. When the light receded and everyone was able to see again, they saw the Thunder Slime crashing toward the opposite end of the arena, forming a crater around where it landed. Eiko narrowed her gaze as she looked at her rival who had transformed into a demi-human creature. A handsome man with long white hair looked at Eiko with a solemn expression on his face. He had the wings of an angel, and the golden horn on his forehead glowed faintly. He was holding a sword in each hand, which made him look like an angel that had descended from the heavens to punish those who defied heaven's will. Astra's strength had now risen to the peak of an Argonaut-ranked world boss, giving him a slight advantage over the Thunder Slime that Eiko summoned. Suddenly, a giggle reached Evrion's ears. Eiko, who was currently in her fairy princess form, giggled as if she found something very interesting. A few seconds later, she flew towards Astra with a fearless grin on her face as if challenging him to fight in close combat. Astra, who had already reached the limit of his patience, flapped the wings on his back and met Eiko in mid-air. He then swung his sword without mercy to the adorable little girl who had repeatedly pestered him to fight. Now that he had transformed into his ultimate form, he decided to teach the annoying fairy princess a lesson she would never forget, or at least, that was what he meant to do. when Aiko and Astra were only a few meters away from each other. A 5-meter-tall skeleton wielding several weapons in each hand appeared behind Aiko. It was none other than Aiko's corpse god, which she had learned to use in combat when Lux was training with Hiras inside the Necromancer's ancestral lands. Just like her papa, Aiko had learned the skill Death God's aura, which created a crimson mist that manifested around the corpse god's body. Astra, who initially thought that the fairy princess was courting death by challenging him in close combat, now faced the corpse god, whose role was to protect its master from any kind of attacks, no matter what form it took. "Is this really a slime?" Alicia asked Vera, who was seated beside her. "I've never seen slimes fight like this." "She's not an ordinary slime," Vera replied with a smile. "She's my grandson's and granddaughter's baby slime. Also, she calls me Mamo." Clearly, Vera also thought of Aiko as an important family member, making Alicia rub her forehead as she tried to digest the information she was receiving. The beautiful secretary of Barbatos Academy then glanced at the half-elf who was watching the battle from the stands. She was wondering what kind of food he was feeding Aiko, and she wished to know the secret to raising a baby slime, who was just as strong and cute as the one in the arena. Even Alexander, who was watching from his VIP seat, didn't expect Aiko to have such high fighting prowess. To be honest, he didn't think too highly of Aiko in the past. For him, a slime was only a slime, and couldn't be treated as a rare or unique monster. But, after seeing this battle, his impression of the baby slime, who was always perched on top of Lux's head, changed by leaps and bounds. Maximilian, who had secretly come to investigate the commotion, was also shocked by the things he witnessed in the arena. Similar to Alexander, he only thought of Aiko as a pet, but after seeing the battle, he realized how wrong his first impression was. The sound of weapons clashing reverberated in the arena as Astra and the corpse god exchanged blows with each other. Although he was now an Argonaut-ranked world boss, Astra was still feeling pressured by Aiko's tenacity and fighting ability. Not only did the unicorn have to block the corpse god's attacks, he also had to evade Aiko's punches and kicks, which forced him to distance himself from the fairy princess. However, since Aiko could teleport, she would always reappear in front of him, giving him no time to catch a breath. Left with no choice, Astra created 5 clones of himself in order to help him attack the fairy princess. However, this was a mistake. He wasn't the only one who could make clones. Aiko shouted. A moment later, 5 fairy princesses appeared behind her. Since these 5 copies could use all of Aiko's abilities, they also summoned their own corpse gods, almost making Astra and his clones puke blood. An all-out dogfight took place in the skies of Arena, as 6 Astras and 6 Aikos fought tooth and nail against each other. Dragon's Breath. Aiko and her clones unleashed purple dragon's breaths, which was imbued by the power of the pseudo-transcendent flames she received back in the Blackrock clan. This power burned the mana of its targets, which also dealt an equivalent magical damage to them. Astra, who was caught by this attack at point-blank range, barely avoided the attack. However, he wasn't able to evade it completely. His left arm was hit by the attack, and his face distorted in pain. Astra immediately backed away to a safe distance. Their battle momentarily came to a halt as Aiko and her clones hovered in the air with their arms crossed over their chest. Clearly, they were giving their enemy time to recover so that he could continue to fight them to his fullest. "I admit that you are strong," Astra said in a cold tone, "but this won't be enough to beat me. You lost your opportunity to win the moment you stopped attacking me." Unknown to Aiko, Astra had been secretly channeling an ultimate spell while fighting her. Now that ultimate spell was completed, all Astra needed to do was unleash this devastating attack that encompassed the entirety of the arena. Without any warning, Astra threw one of his swords towards the sky. This sword then exploded, forming a giant magical array on the heavens. "Magna Kyrie Eleison," Astra roared. He knew that Alexander had also activated the safety mechanism that would instantly teleport anyone that was about to receive a fatal injury. Because of this, Astra threw caution to the wind and unleashed his ultimate attack that could instantly kill a dreadnought-ranked monster. Aiko and her clones were bathed by the brilliant light that descended from the heavens. Although the light was quite intense, the people watching the battle didn't cover their faces and simply waited for the outcome of the battle. The arena shook repeatedly, and cracks appeared on the barrier. However, since Alexander was there, it didn't break and endured the brunt of Astra's strongest attack. A minute later, the light finally faded. Iris, Kay's, Alicia's, Alexander's, and Maximilian's eyes widened in shock because what they saw in the arena wasn't the outcome that all of them had envisioned. Aiko and her clones were perfectly unscathed by Astra's full-powered attack. In fact, the fairy princess was even eating some cookies. which the maids had secretly given her this morning after breakfast. How? Alicia muttered in disbelief. Why does she look perfectly fine? That's because Eiko is immune to holy, light, and divine magic, Vera replied as if this was a very obvious thing. No matter how strong the attack is, unless it surpasses the divine rank, it won't have any effect on her whatsoever. This information made Alicia and those who heard Vera's explanation look at the fairy princess in disbelief. They just couldn't comprehend how a baby slime was able to be completely immune to an attack that could turn a dreadnought-ranked monster into ashes. Done? Eiko asked after finishing the last cookie in her hand. My turn. Due to how shocked Astra was, he was unable to reply to Eiko's question. I think you should take a look at. Assuming that his silence was a yes, Eiko raised her hand and summoned a skeleton bomb that was at least 20 meters tall. This was a lesser version of Eiko's tactical nuke that could obliterate a quarter of an entire city if detonated. She had 10 of these skeleton bombs in her possession, which she had made with Glee's help. Since Astra had used his ultimate attack, Eiko decided to also use her own ultimate attack, which would end the battle between them. Boom boom, Eiko said as she casually tossed the giant skeleton bomb at her opponent. Bakugan, I concede, Astra shouted. The unicorn no longer had the strength and willpower to continue fighting, especially after using his strongest attack, that was supposed to be his trump card. Not to mention, his strongest attack didn't even harm a strand of Eiko's hair, making him wonder if he was just having a dream of fighting against the baby slime, who had wanted to have a rematch with him for a very long time. After hearing Astra's surrender, Alexander waved his hand, making the giant skeleton bomb stop midair and preventing it from exploding. Although he was confident that the barrier wouldn't break as long as he was around, he no longer dared to underestimate the destructive power of the fairy princess, who had made his world views turn upside down. Yay! Eiko spun her body round and round before dancing in the air like a ballerina. She was so happy about her victory over Astra that she couldn't help but express her emotions by letting her body move as she pleased. Dancing was an unknown concept to her, but that was what exactly happened. Eiko danced happily above the arena, making those who saw it smile due to how happy and charming she looked as she allowed her emotions to run free. A minute later, she flew towards Iris and hugged her tight. I won, Mama, Eiko said with a big smile on her face. Congratulations, Iris replied before planting a kiss on the adorable girl's face. Eiko giggled happily before kissing Iris back. After that, she returned to her baby slime form and nuzzled Iris' cheeks. The blue-haired beauty then lightly patted the baby slime's face, making Eiko very satisfied. A moment later, Iris glanced at her guardian, Astra, who had also returned to his unicorn form, with his head down and looking very dejected. You did well, Astra, Iris said softly through telepathy. There is no shame in losing to Eiko. Just like how she strived to become strong in order to beat you, you must also strive to become stronger in order to beat her next time. Astra, who hadn't looked at this angle, slowly raised his head and looked at his master, who was giving him an encouraging look. Let's become strong together, Astra, Iris stated. Next time, it will be you who will be asking Eiko for a rematch. Have you forgotten? You have beaten her twice. She only beat you once. So the score is 2 victories and 1 loss. You are still ahead by 1 win. Although Astra knew that Iris was merely consoling him, her words had moved him and stroked his desire to become stronger. Now that he had a goal in mind, the unicorn decided to train harder so that the next time he met Eiko, he would be the one to challenge her in a battle. And this time, he would no longer be the one losing. Seeing that her guardian had regained his willpower, the blue-haired beauty secretly thanked Eiko in her heart. Because of this incident, Astra would not be the only one who would become serious about becoming stronger. Her other guardians, who had also watched the battle from their connection with her, also became determined to not let the baby slime, whom they didn't take seriously in the past, to get ahead of them in terms of strength. Fei, who was perched on Kei's head, looked at Eiko with a determined expression on her face. After seeing her best friend fight, a desire that wasn't there in the past started to bloom in the baby golden slime's heart. Perhaps sensing her beast companion's thoughts, Sai held Fei in her hands and kissed her forehead. Let's also become strong, Fei, Sai said through her connection with her baby slime. Why? Fei nodded her head. Later that day, Sai rummaged through her grandpa's collection of beast cores and picked the ones she could feed to Fei in order to make her stronger. Maximilian, who had seen the battle, also thought that making Fei strong was a good investment. If Fei could become as strong as Eiko, then he would feel more assured that his granddaughter would have another layer of protection that would shield her from those who wished her harm. A day had passed since Eiko's and Astra's battle. Tomorrow, the rankers of Barbados Academy and the Rowan tribe will depart for the domain of the fallen, Alexander said after they had just finished their lunch. I talked to Mother, and she agreed to accompany Iris and Sai to the meeting place to ensure their safety. This is also our way of telling the Zinner War Pact, the Skystead Alliance, and the Six Kingdoms, that we have one more saint on our side. I'm pretty sure that they will be shocked after seeing her, and this will also make them take our faction more seriously. Lux nodded his head in understanding. He felt a lot better after knowing that his grandma would escort Iris and Sai to the entrance of the domain of the fallen. If possible, he also wanted to come with them, but time was not on his side. He had to meet with the steward of the Crystal Palace as soon as possible so that he could ask whether his guild could take asylum in their territory. An hour later, Lux, Iris, and Sai went to the blue-haired body's residence to spend the remainder of the day together. Iris even told her father and grandma that they would not be joining them for dinner. Because of this, Vera volunteered to take care of Eiko and Fei Fei for the time being, understanding well what her granddaughter wanted to do. Since they only had a day to be together, Lux and his two fiancés planned to make the best of it before the sun rose, when all of them had to depart to carry out their respective missions. As soon as they entered Iris' bedroom, the blue-haired beauty dragged Lux to the bed without another word. Naturally, the half-elf didn't resist and even allowed his two fiancés to remove his clothes, while the two ladies took turns in kissing his lips. Lux's lean and toned body, which had become more attractive after becoming a rancor, was something that Iris and Sai were both secretly happy about. Of course, this was also what the half-elf thought as Iris and Sai also removed their clothes in front of him. After becoming rancors, the two gorgeous ladies even became more seductive in his eyes. His only problem was that his eyes automatically darted to their thighs, which made him swallow hard, and his little brother stood up like a warrior that was about to fight a war every time. Seeing his reaction, the two ladies glanced at each other before lowering their heads to take turns in kissing the little guy, which made Lux breathe deeply. Lux felt that he was the luckiest and happiest man in the world as the two ladies did their best to make him feel good. After losing her chastity, Sai seemed to have gotten bolder. She even took the initiative to take the half-elf's member inside her mouth, while Iris licked and sucked his balls. Lux's hands weren't being idle as he played and teased the entrance of their caves, which his little brother would be exploring later. A few minutes later, a groan escaped Lux's lips as his seed spurted inside Kay's mouth. The High Priestess closed her eyes as the half-elf's member twitched inside her mouth. She kept her mouth around his member, making sure that she didn't spill a single drop. When Lux's climax ended, Sai covered her lips with her hand before swallowing. For some reason, the sight of the High Priestess swallowing his essence made the love and desire in Lux's chest flare up, allowing his member to retain its hardness. Fortunately, what happened with Sai the other day didn't happen again, allowing Lux to make love to the both of them 6 rounds each. He didn't want to overdo it because his second fiancée had a limit on the number of times that she could make love to Lux. Also, since both girls were headed to the last gate of the apocalypse, he didn't want to tire them too much. After their love-making ended, the three of them took a bath and returned to the bed just to cuddle and hug each other. How long do you think it will take for the three of us to be together again? Iris asked as she rested her head on Lux's chest. I don't know, Lux replied honestly. After going to the Crystal Palace, I have to go to Algartha to meet with someone. My intuition tells me that it's a girl. Sai commented with her head resting on Lux's shoulder. Am I right, or am I wrong? You're right, Lux answered. Her name is Aurora. She has a beautiful name, Iris said. Is she also beautiful? Yes, Lux replied. More beautiful than us? Sai inquired in a teasing tone. Just as beautiful as the two of you, Lux answered in a heartbeat. Iris and Sai gave each other a knowing glance before sucking Lux's nipples hard at the same time, which made the half-elf's body stiffen. Lux knew that his two fiancés were merely teasing him, so he decided to retaliate by pinching their nipples as well. A moment later, the three frolicked on the bed, which ended with Lux making love to them 2 more times, before finally calling it a day. This is the first time you've asked me to do something like this, Iris asked. I just want to experiment a little, Lux replied while his head rested on Iris' thighs. I think you should take a look at. Experiment a bit. Iris arched an eyebrow as she lightly brushed Lux's hair. Yes. And the result of your experiment is, your thighs are amazing. Sai, who didn't want to lose to Iris, decided to join in on the fun. Soon the half-elf found himself sandwiched between the thighs of his two fiancés, making him wonder if they planned to send him on a one-way trip to heaven. Right before sunrise, Lux, Iris, and Sai stood at the gates of Barbato's academy. The three of them were reluctant to part with each other, but they understood that each of them had their own responsibilities. They hugged each other till the very last moment, with Eiko and Fei Fei joining them as well. Protect Mama, Eiko said to the white unicorn, who was standing a few meters away from Iris. Astra gave the baby slime the "you don't have to tell me" glare, which Eiko responded to by glaring back at him as well. "It's time to go," Vera said as she gave Lux a hug. "Make sure to send some reports to the guild chat from time to time." "I will, Grandma," Lux replied. "Please also update me on the recent happenings in the Gate of the Apocalypse." Vera nodded and promised her grandson that she would do just that. Soon, Iris, Sai, Henrietta, and Xander, along with the other rankers of Barbados Academy and the Rowan tribe, entered Maximilian's portable teleportation gate that would send them a mile away from the entrance of the Gate of the Fallen. Keen and Gerhardt were still in the midst of doing their ranker trials, so they were unable to join this expedition. As for Cephas, he was waiting for Lux in the Crystal Palace, as part of their agreement, although the Dragonborn felt that it was regrettable to not enter the last Gate of the Apocalypse. He understood that his guild's safety was the top priority. Iris, Sai, and Vera were the last people to enter the portal. However, before they did, they waved goodbye at Lux one last time, making the half-elf almost want to join them on their adventure. Still, he endured and waved back at them, with a smile on his face. Only when everyone had left did the half-elf sigh deeply, making him feel a little lonely. Alexander, who stood by his side, rested his hand on his stepson's shoulder. "If you need my help, feel free to call me any time," Alexander stated. "It doesn't matter if you are facing the Divine Army of Light or other strong opponents. There is no shame in asking for help, especially when you are dealing with saints." Lux nodded and promised his stepfather that he would not hesitate to ask for his help if he truly needed it. Maximilian said the same thing as Alexander and even playfully messed with Lux's hair, making Eiko bite his hand out of annoyance. The patriarch of the Rowan tribe roared in laughter after seeing the feisty baby slime protect her papa from his actions. As a saint, Eiko's bite did nothing to him. He even felt that the baby slime was quite cute as she latched onto his hand, not letting it go. "Eiko, it's fine." Lux coaxed the baby slime to let go of his soon-to-be grandfather-in-law's hand. "Sir Maximilian is just teasing me." Eiko also understood that she wasn't doing any damage to the old coot, so she decided to just stick her tongue out at him, making the old man laugh out loud for the second time. "I'll be going now," Lux said as he gave two of his strongest allies a nod of farewell. "Be careful," Alexander replied. "I'll always be free to lend my hand if you need me." "I as well," Maximilian stated. "One of these days, I'll visit your guild headquarters and see what kind of fun things you are cooking up in there." Lux smiled before pressing his closed fist over his chest. "Open, Heaven's Gate." A flash of light wrapped around Lux's entire body. A moment later, he disappeared from where he stood and returned to the outer reaches to handle the matter of his guild headquarters. Although he felt a little anxious about his two fiancés going inside the last Gate of the Apocalypse without him, he tried to brush it off, assuring himself with the fact that there were many rankers who would protect them. He wasn't aware that within the last gate of the sacred dungeon, an incident that no one had anticipated was about to unfold. Outer reaches. "You're finally back, Lux," Gop said with a smile. "How was your family reunion?" "It went well, Master," Lux replied. "We can now go to the Crystal Palace to talk to their steward." "Did Cephas already make the preparations?" Gop nodded. "He returned here yesterday and set the coordinates to one of the strongholds near the capital city of the Crystal Dragons. However, he didn't stay for long, and went to Rex Lapis to meet his other grandma, Faustina. It seems that he needed to report to her that he had successfully become a ranker or something." Lux smirked due to how filial Cephas was. Because of his two exceptional grandmothers, the Dragonborn was able to walk unhindered in both Karshwar Draconis and the Crystal Palace. "Well then, shall we go now?" Gop asked as he finished drinking his tea. "The sooner we talk to the steward, the better." The half-elf nodded his head in agreement and followed his master to the teleportation gate. Truth be told, he was feeling slightly anxious about meeting Lady Augustina, who was the steward of the Crystal Palace. Although she was Cephas' grandmother, he couldn't be as calm and collected as the arrogant Dragonborn. After all, he was going to meet a supreme. Perhaps, noticing his anxiety, Gop only patted his shoulders and gave him a reassuring smile. "Don't be so tense," Gop stated. "Even if she doesn't agree, we can always just wander around and look for a place that we can call our home." Lux smiled and felt less anxious about meeting the steward of the Crystal Palace. He once asked Kiaza if he knew Lady Augustina, but the dragon token remained silent. No matter how much the half-elf asked about the Crystal Palace, it was as if Kiaza had gone into hibernation and didn't want to bother answering Lux's inquiries. When the half-elf and the halfling entered the teleportation gate, they were welcomed by dozens of armed Dragonborns, who seemed to be waiting for their arrival. To Lux's surprise, the one at the very front was a very familiar-looking Dragonborn, who was looking at him, with a very big smile on his face. The smile was so wide that Lux felt as if his liver was itching, more especially so when he was reminded that it was coming from a saint who had waited for him for nearly a month at the entrance of the Gate of the Fallen. Hello, Uncle Picoro. Lux greeted the Dragonborn with a smile. Picoro didn't reply. Instead, he walked towards the half-elf in a steady pace, with the same smile plastered on his face. When he was only a meter away from the red-headed teenager, he reached out his arm and grabbed Lux's robes, lifting him high up in the air with one hand. "You brat! How dare you make me wait at the entrance of the Gate of the Fallen for a very long time?" Picoro roared in anger, making all the rankers that had come to welcome Lux and Gop snicker. "Also, who are you calling uncle? I have no recollection of having a bastard like you as my nephew." Picoro was one of the highest-ranking nobles of the Crystal Palace, and only a handful of individuals could make the hot-tempered Dragonborn reign in his anger. Lux, who received Picoro's anger, as well as flying spittle, could only hang helplessly as the Dragonborn continued to spout a litany of curses. Although he was being berated, the Dragonborn looked and sounded cute, at least compared to the curses that he received from his Grandmaster, Hireswith. After the half-elf's face was drenched by Picoro's spittle, Lux calmly wiped his face with a handkerchief, which made the saint even angrier. Just as he was about to shake Lux's body to oblivion, an amused voice resounded in the sky, which made the Dragonborn cease all hostilities. "Picoro, bring him here to the palace," Lady Augustina ordered. "I want to have a proper talk with him." Picoro glared at the half-elf before putting him back down on the ground. "Follow me." He didn't even bother to wait for Lux's reply, before turning around to fly in the sky. Lux summoned his mount, Jed, and helped his master, Gop, to mount him as well. "I think you should take a look at." The Thunder Warg King then flew high in the air and followed the Dragonborn, who flew at a steady pace, not leaving them behind. The other rankers just watched them from a distance. Since Picoro was the one to personally pick up Lux from the teleportation gate, they no longer needed to escort him to the Crystal Palace, where their steward was waiting for him. After traveling for half an hour, Lux noticed something shining in the distance. As they came closer to it, he realized that he was staring at a structure that looked as if it was made from crystal. Lux had seen many things, but he had never seen something like this in his lifetime. "It has been a while since I've been to the Crystal Palace," Gop commented from behind Lux. "It looks just as majestic as I remembered it." The Crystal Palace was a palace literally made up of crystals. However, these crystals were a bit special. It was made from the dragon breath of a supreme-ranked crystal dragon, creating a nearly invincible stronghold that wouldn't break even if it was hit by a full-powered blow from a supreme. Similar to Lux's guild headquarters, the Crystal Palace was located in the middle of a mountain. At its base was the capital city of Rexthriza, which served as the main city of those that belonged to the Crystal Palace. As Lux, Gop, and Picoro approached the airspace of the capital, the half-elf frowned because he could feel the power of a being that far outclassed a saint. His Dragon King's aura was domineering, but he mostly reigned it inside his body. This aura, however, was radiating so intensely, like an invisible sun, making beads of sweat form on Lux's forehead. A few minutes later, Picoro descended from the sky. The half-elf followed suit, and guided Jed to land at the entrance of the palace, where several individuals were waiting for them. "Welcome to the Crystal Palace, Lux." Or, who looked as handsome as ever, greeted Lux with a smile that made the half-elf wonder if he was looking at the same person. The dragon prince that he had met in the past wasn't this friendly, which made the half-elf feel as if something was out of place. "Hello, Your Highness." Lux bowed respectfully at the dragon prince, which made Picoro nod his head in approval. "It's a pleasure to see you again," cried the half-elf before shaking his head. "There is no need for formalities between us," or stated. "I know that you've come here to discuss an important matter with Lady Augustina. She is already waiting for you in the throne room. Please follow me." Lux took a deep breath before following the dragon prince inside the Crystal Palace. Now that he had arrived in their territory, he needed to do his best to be as polite and respectful as possible in order to create a good impression. What he didn't know was that the moment he had arrived in the territory of the Crystal Palace, Lady Augustina had already been observing his every move. "So this is the person you chose, Your Majesty," Lady Augustina thought as she leaned back on her throne. "I look forward to meeting him personally." She had heard many things about Lux through her grandson, Cephas, and wondered if he was just exaggerating, or telling her the truth. But after sensing the dragon token in Lux's possession, and feeling a familiar aura inside it, the steward of the Crystal Palace smiled in her heart. She knew that after many years of separation, she would finally get a chance to talk to her true master, whom she believed to be the only rightful king of the dragon race. Just like its exterior, The interior of the Crystal Palace was also made up of crystals. He knew that dragons like to collect treasures, as well as surround themselves with gold, but this was taking things to the next level. A few minutes later, they finally arrived at the throne room, where Lady Augustina was waiting for them. The one to enter first was Or, followed by Lux, and then Gop. The last one to enter was Picoro, as if to make sure that the half-elf wouldn't be going anywhere, just like what happened in the domain of the fallen. To this day, he still didn't know how the half-elf was able to leave the domain without exiting through the gate, which he had been guarding for nearly a month. If not for the fact that Lady Augustina had informed him that Lux would be coming to the Crystal Palace, he would still be there, waiting for the half-elf to appear. Picoro had many questions, but he decided to ask these questions later. After all, now that the half-elf was within his line of sight, he would make sure that the other party wouldn't be going anywhere until he got his answers. We finally met face to face, Lux von Xer, Lady Augustina said. You may have already heard of me, but allow me to introduce myself. My name is Augustina, and I am the steward of the Crystal Palace. Or will replace me as its rightful heir when he has come of age. Cephas has already told me about the purpose of your visit. However, I would like to hear from your own mouth, in your own words, about this request that you wish to ask of me. The black-scaled dragonborn, with silver streaks on the side of her face, looked at the half-elf with a calm expression on her face. She was waiting for Lux to say his request, and see if it matched what her grandson had told her. First of all, thank you for granting me the time to meet with you, Your Excellency. Lux gave Lady Augustina a respectful bow. My reason for coming here is to ask for your asylum, but before that, allow me to explain why I needed your help. You see, Lux told everyone in the throne room about his recent clash with the Divine Army of Light. Or and Picoro, who had no idea why Lux had come to visit them, were shocked because they didn't expect the half-elf to somehow entangle himself with a massive organization that spanned hundreds of kingdoms and empires. Unbelievable, Picoro commented. So that announcement that was heard all over the world was about you becoming a ranker and unlocking a sacred class. Not only that, you are a progenitor, the first of its kind. This is truly something unexpected. Lady Augustina arched an eyebrow after hearing Lux's explanation. Her no-good grandson, Cephas, had only told her that Lux had gotten into a conflict with the Divine Army of Light. However, he didn't fully explain to her why the half-elf had managed to rub such a big organization off in a bad way. Or, who was just as surprised as Picoro, looked at the half-elf in admiration. Unlocking a sacred class while becoming a ranker was truly an amazing thing. Not only that, Lux was a progenitor of the Heaven's Necromancer class, making him unique in the world. I think you should take a look at. After hearing Lux's explanation, everyone in the throne room understood why the Divine Army of Light was targeting him. Heaven's Necromancer, Lady Augustina said softly. Such an absurd and contradicting profession, and yet, you are here, standing before me. Tell me, Lux, have you talked to the Dragon King of Karshwar Draconis about this matter as well? Lux nodded. Since my guild headquarters is stationed in the outer reaches, the first person whom I asked for help was the Dragon King. Sadly, he wasn't interested in helping me. I see. Lady Augustina rested the side of her face over the back of her hand, and eyed the half-elf with a critical gaze. While I don't mind giving you asylum against the Divine Army of Light, what can you offer me in exchange for my protection? About this, Lux scratched his head as he looked at the steward of the Crystal Palace with a helpless smile. Is there something that Her Excellency wants the most? You are already a supreme and the ruler of one of the strongest factions in Elysium. You already have everything, be it treasures, status, and power. Since that is the case, is there something that you want that I might offer in exchange for asylum? Lady Augustina smiled after hearing Lux's reply. You're quite eloquent with words. While it is true that I can get whatever I want if I wish for it, there are some things that even I didn't have the ability to get, regardless of my rank and influence. Truth be told, you have nothing to offer me. However, I would like to ask you a few questions. Take note that I hate liars the most. I want honesty from you. Depending on your answers, I will consider giving you my protection. Do we have an understanding? Lux nodded and waited for Lady Augustina's questions. The first question is this, Lady Augustina said with a solemn expression on her face. What is your end goal? The thing that you want to achieve in your lifetime? Lux didn't answer right away as he carefully weighed his words. Inside his head, he was thinking of a way to make his answer sound less cheesy. He already knew the answer to this question, but he was debating on how he was going to properly word it. I know that what I'm going to say might sound unbelievable and overly pompous, but this is the main reason why I am here in Elysium, Lux replied. The world of Solais is dying, and I am here to find a way to save it from destruction. The corner of Lady Augustina's curled up into a smile as she made her opinion known. Saving your world is well and good, but the current you can't even save yourself from the divine army of light. Lady Augustina smirked. Tell me, do you have any concrete plans for how to save your world, Solais? Lux shook his head. I have no idea how to save Solais. All I know is that I will find the answer here in Elysium. This is why I needed to explore this world in search of a way to save my world. However, just as Her Excellency had said, the current me can neither save myself, nor my guild from the divine army of light, much less save a world. Even so, my goal will not change. I will do everything in my power to find the answer that I am looking for. And for that to happen, I need time to grow and become stronger, which is something that the divine army of light will not allow to happen. Lady Augustina nodded her head, sensing that there wasn't any falsehood in Lux's reply. Picoro, on the other hand, snorted in contempt because there was nothing special in Lux's answer. In fact, all the Solaians that had come to Elysium had said the same thing. They were looking for a way to save their world, so the half-elf's answer wasn't that special in his eyes. Now that I have heard your goal for coming here to Elysium, this is my next question, Lady Augustina stated. If you were given a choice to choose between what is right and what is easy, which one would you choose? That will depend on the situation, Lux replied, and my current ability at that time. The half-elf then paused before continuing his explanation. Let's take my current conflict with the divine army of light as an example. They have one-sidedly branded me as a heretic without taking into consideration the fact that my current profession was something that I didn't choose on my own accord. It just so happened that I was able to meet its requirements. Based on this example, those who are in the right are only able to be right because they have the strength to back it up. I, however, don't have this ability. Because of this, if I were given a choice to fight or run away from them, I will choose to run away, which is the easiest choice to make. Fighting them right now is akin to suicide, and I don't want anyone in my guild to sacrifice their lives needlessly in a battle where there is no hope of winning. Lady Augustina closed her eyes as she weighed Lux's words. You said that fighting them, right now, is akin to suicide, Lady Augustina commented. Does this mean that you will fight them eventually? If the matter is not resolved between us, then yes, Lux replied. They are the aggressor in this conflict, and I am only doing my best to survive. If they force my hand, then I will, of course, fight back. However, I will fight back on my own terms, and in a way that will allow me to survive. Guerrilla tactics then. It is one of the options that are available for those who are at a disadvantage. Picoro chuckled after hearing Lux's reply. For saints like him, there was no need for guerrilla tactics. They could simply flatten an entire city, if they had to, and that would become enough deterrence for anyone to stop making a move on them. Next question. You ask for asylum, but how long do you plan to stay under my protection? Lady Augustina asked. 1 year. Lux answered in a heartbeat. Please grant us protection for 1 year. After that, we will leave the Crystal Palace, and no longer trouble you again. Lux's answer caught everyone in the throne room completely by surprise. Even Lady Augustina didn't expect that the half-elf would only ask for a year of protection, instead of an entire lifetime. A year. Lady Augustina lightly tapped the armrest of her throne. Are you sure that you only need a year? Lux nodded. Yes, I only need a year. Ha! What a joke. Picoro voiced his opinion out loud for everyone to hear. How much can you accomplish in a year? Do you think you can become a saint in a year's time? Lux didn't reply and simply held Lady Augustina's gaze. The one he needed to convince was not Picoro, but the steward of the Crystal Palace, who had the highest authority in this domain. Regardless of what Seth's uncle thought, Lux wasn't someone who wanted to hug someone's thigh forever, unless they were the thighs of his lovers. Gop had informed him beforehand that dragons and dragonborns were a very proud race. He added that powerful beings only wanted to treat others of the same rank as equals. For someone as lowly as Lux, showing a sign of weakness would make these proud individuals look down on him. Since that was the case, he decided to only ask his guild headquarters to be stationed in the territory of the Crystal Palace for a year. He believed that in that span of time, he and his guild members would be able to think of a strategy to make the divine army of light understand that they weren't soft persimmons that they could pinch any time they wanted. Even a cornered animal would bite back if left with no other choice, and Lux was willing to bite back as hard as he could to make those who wished him dead feel a world of pain. After Picoro's initial outburst, an awkward silence descended upon the throne room as the half-elf and the steward of the Crystal Palace continued to observe each other's reaction. I think you should take a look at. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Lady Augustina finally spoke. I have heard your answers, Lady Augustina stated, and I shall let you know my answer tomorrow. For the time being, you can rest in the guest rooms that we have prepared for you and your master. One more thing, please leave your dragon token behind. I needed to look at it to check its authenticity. You don't mind doing that, right? Lux took out the dragon token from his storage ring and looked at it, with a solemn expression on his face. A moment later, he extended his hand, presenting the dragon token on the palm of his hand to the steward of the Crystal Palace. With a motioning gesture from Lady Augustina, the dragon token flew in her direction and landed on her clawed hands. You may take your leave, Lady Augustina stated. Also, everyone, please leave the throne room. I need some time to think on my own. Or nodded and walked towards the half-elf. Please follow me, Lux, Or said. I will take you to the guest room. Understood, Lux replied. The half-elf gave the dragon token in Lady Augustina's hand one last glance before following behind Or. Only when the last person had exited the throne room did Lady Augustina look at the dragon token in her hand with reverence. Your Majesty, I missed you, Lady Augustina said in a somewhat hoarse voice. Suddenly, a sigh sounded from the dragon token as it glowed faintly in her hands. It has been hard on you, Augustina, Chiazza replied in an apologetic tone. How is she? Is she well? I'm sure that she misses you as much as I do. Your Majesty, Lady Augustina stated. Would you like to see her? Please. Chiazza's voice, which was filled with longing, made Lady Augustina become teary-eyed. Right away. Your Majesty, the steward of the Crystal Palace held the dragon token with the utmost care in her hand before disappearing from her throne. As Chiazza's right-hand woman, she had been given the task to protect everything he had left behind, including his wife and child, whom he was forced to abandon for the sake of the continuation of the entire dragon race. Before doing so, he had transferred all of his powers to Lady Augustina, allowing her to become a supreme and safeguard everyone who believed in him. This was why he was nowhere to be found on the day of his coronation, allowing the current Dragon King to take his place as a replacement. Only a handful of people, including his wife, Lady Augustina, and Picoro knew of the true reason for his disappearance. Now that Chiazza was back in his own domain, he wished to see his wife, whom he hadn't seen for centuries. Leaving the half-elf in the care of the Dragon Prince, who had become more friendly toward him, since they had last seen each other in the Gate of Famine. By the way, Your Highness, aren't you supposed to be exploring the Gate of the Apocalypse right now? Lux asked as he trailed behind Or, who was leading him to the guest room prepared just for him. Calling me Your Highness after fighting side by side with me sounds stiff, Or replied before giving Lux a smile that would make any lady swoon over him. Just call me Or. I've been calling you Lux, so it's only fair that you call me by name as well. But Lux glanced at Picoro, who was walking beside them, with his arms crossed over his chest. Since His Highness has given you permission to call him by his name, you should just obey, and be honored for receiving such treatment, Picoro replied. Such privileges are not given to just anyone, so you better be thankful for the grace that he has given you, filthy low-lander. Lux wasn't offended by Picoro's taunts, and instead found it very tame. After all, he had been stuck with Hireswith for 2 whole weeks. Compared to his Grandmaster's profanities, the Dragonborn's ridicule felt just like a passing wind. You asked me why I didn't go to the Gate of the Apocalypse, right? Or said. Originally, the plan was for me to go there, along with the rankers of the Crystal Palace. However, after hearing from Aunt Augustina that you would be coming to our domain, I decided to stay and let my subordinates handle the exploration by themselves. By the way, how did you manage to leave the dungeon without appearing at the Gate of the Fallen? Picoro waited outside the gate for nearly a month, you know. The black-scaled Dragonborn's lips twitched after being reminded of the wasted time that he had spent, waiting for the half-elf to exit the dungeon. Just like Or, he was curious about how the half-elf was able to leave without leaving the dungeon the normal way. About that, after I left the dungeon, I was teleported to a different place, Lux said with a calm expression on his face. Since I was already outside the dungeon, I returned to the outer reaches in order to handle a few things in my guild headquarters. Then, I returned to my homeworld to have a family reunion. Actually, I just returned from Solais, and the first thing I did was come here to the Crystal Palace to ask the steward for protection against the Divine Army of Light. Picoro remained silent as Lux explained what happened on his side after leaving the dungeon. As a saint, he knew that the half-elf only spoke half-truths. Even so, since Or was around, he decided to no longer berate the red-headed teenager for making him wait for nearly a month. The name of your world is Solais, right? Or inquired. What is it like? All of you foreigners can visit our world, but we are unable to visit your world. Sometimes, I feel that it is a little unfair. Well, I have only seen a bit of Solais, so I can't really give you a good description of it, Lux answered. I grew up in Wildjard Stronghold, and stayed there for 16 years. You can even say that I have seen more of Elysium than I had seen Solais. Here, I can go anywhere I want without worrying about the miasma that is spreading at the borders of our territories. The half-elf then told the dragon prince about his life in Wildjard's stronghold, as well as the frustrations he had in the past due to his weak body. Naturally, he neither told or about the god of games nor about how he managed to recover from his weakness. He only mentioned that he had a fortuitous encounter, and that it allowed him to finally come to Elysium, where his adventure officially started. The kingdom of Gwillivan, or pondered. The name isn't familiar to me, but I'm a bit jealous. You can travel to different places whenever you want. As for me, or trailed off and didn't finish his explanation. Lux understood that, as the Prince of the Crystal Palace, the places he was allowed to go to were very limited. Not only that, even if he were allowed to go out, he would always be surrounded by countless protectors that would ensure his safety. Your Highness, the outside world isn't as safe as you think, Picoro commented. As the sole heir of the Crystal Palace, your safety is of the utmost import. Enough, Picoro, or stated. I understand. You don't have to worry about me. I think you should take a look at. Yes, Your Highness. The Dragonborn bowed apologetically to his prince. A few minutes later, they finally arrived at their destination. The half-elf thought that Or would leave as soon as he showed him his temporary lodgings. But on the contrary, the dragon prince stayed inside the room, and asked Lux to tell him about his adventures in Leaf Village. Of course, Or didn't forget to ask Lux how he was able to acquire the dragon token, which he had temporarily turned over to Lady Augustina for safekeeping. Ha ha ha, you fought against kobolds. Picoro laughed. You're lucky that the Cadmus guy didn't snap your head off. If I were in his shoes, I wouldn't think twice about doing it. Well, I am on good terms with the kobold tribe now after that incident, Lux replied. In fact, they were one of my first guild members. They are even helping me gather resources for my guild. That's the only thing they are good for. Picoro snorted. Dig, dig, and dig. They are like those dwarves that have nothing better to do than burrow under the earth. Dwarves, as of late, have learned to explore above the ground as well. Their ability to not get lost in the places that they have traveled before is a very remarkable ability. Lux could tell that Picoro looked down on anyone aside from the dragon race, but he was fine with that. Sethus was the same in the past, but now, the Dragonborn had become less arrogant, at least when he was with them. So, ever since that day you cleared the dungeon, you have had the dragon token in your hands, right? Or asked with a calm expression on his face. You also said that you have summoned Kiaza twice. That means that you can only summon him one last time. Lux nodded. Yes. He said that I could call out to him 3 times. There was a time when he helped me of his own accord, even when I didn't ask for his help. If he hadn't, I don't know what might have happened to me. Back then, I was consumed by the lust for vengeance that I don't have much recollection of what happened. All I wanted to do in my berserk state was to kill people. The half-elf noticed that Or and Picoro were very interested in the stories about Kiaza. Because of this, he told them about the times when he asked for the crystal dragon's help, as well as the advice he had given to him whenever he needed it the most. You are lucky to have received his Kiaza's dragon token. Picoro cleared his throat. I'm sure that you would have long been dead if you hadn't acquired it due to how stupid and weak you are. Well, you're not wrong. Lux nodded. I owe Kiaza a lot. With him by my side, I feel like I have a good luck charm that will help me overcome the obstacles that stand before me. HMP8. Picoro snorted, but he didn't say anything to the half-elf. Or, on the other hand, smiled and asked Lux to continue his tale about his adventures in Solais. Seeing how enthusiastic the dragon prince was, the half-elf decided to continue his tale until the sun had set over the horizon. When Or left the room, he thanked Lux for his time, and promised to accompany him in exploring their capital city, Rex Riza. When morning came, the half-elf thanked Or and Picoro for their hospitality before retiring for the night. His master, Gop, had left the half-elf to talk to some old acquaintances, and promised that he would be back as soon as possible. Since the halfling still hadn't returned, Lux thought that he might be doing a lot of catching up with the Dragonborns, who owed a lot of debt to his grandmaster, Hireswith.
Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share and subscribe. Have a great day.